We think of prison as cold, harsh, and unforgiving. But what happens when a billionaire ends up being behind bars? Do the rich really suffer like the rest? From private chefs to backdoor favors, today we're diving into how convicted billionaires live in prison and how money can bend even the toughest rules. For billionaires, the fall isn't just about going to prison. It's about being ripped from a world of control, comfort, and respect and dropped into one where none of that matters. One day you're in a Gulfstream jet-sipping aged scotch over the Atlantic. The next, you're barefoot in a concrete intake room, holding a mesh laundry bag, waiting to be assigned a bunk. Bernie Madoff's descent was brutal. At the height of his empire, he managed over $65 billion. He owned penthouses, yachts, and a wardrobe filled with tailored suits. When his Ponzi scheme collapsed, so did the illusion of untouchability. He was arrested, handcuffed in a dark overcoat, and sent to Butner Federal Correctional Complex. Gone were the boardrooms and catered lunches. In came a 9x6 foot cell, shared with another inmate. He went from orchestrating the largest financial fraud in history to folding laundry and dodging eye contact in the yard. His life, once ruled by schedules packed with power meetings, was now broken into chunks by meal times and inmate headcounts. Raj Rajaratnam, the former hedge fund manager at the center of Galleon Group insider trading case, faced a similar reality shift. Convicted in 2011 and sentenced to 11 years, he entered a federal prison in Massachusetts. This was a man who once made trades worth hundreds of millions before lunch. In prison, he shared space with men who didn't know or care about stock indices. The rules were different. You waited for the shower, you followed orders, you kept your mouth shut. The hardest part isn't just losing freedom, it's losing identity. In prison, you're not Sir, CEO, or Founder. Your inmate number is 61727-054, and no one's impressed by your net worth. But while their freedom is stripped, not all of their privileges disappear. In theory, prison is the great equalizer. Steel doors, strict schedules, state-issued everything. But in reality, when a billionaire walks through those gates, they don't always leave their money behind. Inside, it still buys influence. It still opens doors, and sometimes it even softens the cell. Let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein. In 2008, after being convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor, he was sentenced to 18 months in a Palm Beach County jail. But jail didn't look like jail, not for Epstein, because within weeks, he was granted a controversial work release deal. For 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, he left his cell to work from his private office. According to reports, he even had female visitors during this time. His so-called punishment turned into a part-time inconvenience. One officer later admitted he'd never seen an inmate get that much freedom. It was less a sentence, more a schedule adjustment. It's not just about getting out, sometimes it's about upgrading within. Inmates with serious money have been known to improve their daily lives through unofficial channels. In county jails across California, some wealthier defendants have been offered pay-to-stay programs, where for a fee, sometimes hundreds of dollars a night, they could serve time in safer, cleaner facilities, even with access to their own clothes and personal electronics. In 2011, former record executive Ja Rule, while serving a sentence for gun possession, reportedly had access to personal items and food from outside sources during his time in New York's Rikers Island. Behind bars, money talks in more subtle ways too. Rich inmates might donate to the prison library, fund a new gym machine, or simply keep the commissionery flowing. In return, small privileges, better cellmates, more lenient guards, or a safer position in the prison hierarchy. Jobs that normally go to long-timers like working in the kitchen or library magically find their way to well-connected inmates. These positions come with better conditions, more freedom, and less risk. You don't mop floors at midnight, you handle books in peace. Even food becomes a class marker. Most inmates rely on bland government-issued meals and low-quality commissionery snacks, but a wealthy prisoner with a stocked account can feast. By prison standards, on packaged salmon, jalapeno squeezed cheese, protein bars, and microwave burritos from the canteen. It's not steak tartare, but it's a step above mystery meat stew. Some guards turn a blind eye, some look the other way for a cut, and some are just exhausted by the system and let power do what it always does: slip through the cracks. Because when you've spent your life bending rules with a pen or a wire transfer, prison is just another system to figure out. One more institution where money isn't banned, just buried in the details. And when the prison system itself bends, some rich inmates turn jail into a private lounge. There's a kind of prison where the gates don't clank shut, the walls aren't topped with razor wire, and the air doesn't reek of fear. It's called a minimum security federal prison camp. And for some wealthy offenders, it's the softest landing possible when the law finally catches up. Take FCI Otisville in New York. It's not a hotel, but by prison standards, it might as well be a gated retreat. Forbes once called it one of the cushiest prisons in America. Inmates here sleep in dorm-style rooms instead of cells. The yard has tennis courts, and there's crafts room where you can take up painting. You won't find gang fights in the showers, but you might overhear discussions about the stock market during a morning jog. Michael Milken, the so-called junk bond king, did his time at a federal camp like this in the early 90s. Convicted of securities fraud, Milken didn't spend time in a high-security wing with armed guards and lockdowns. He served 22 months where the biggest challenge might have been boredom. He eventually rebranded as a philanthropist, his time in prison barely a footnote to his later image. Then there is Billy McFarland, the man behind the Fyre Festival disaster, a luxury music event that famously unraveled into tents, cheese sandwiches, and a PR nightmare. After pleading guilty to wire fraud, McFarland was sent to FCI Elkton in Ohio, another low-security camp. There, he reportedly had access to books, the internet, obviously under supervision, and a degree of freedom unimaginable in tougher facilities. It was no island getaway, but it wasn't a cage either. These camps are designed for non-violent first-time offenders. The threat level is low, the supervision light, and the population often includes white-collar criminals, former CEOs, lawyers, doctors. Inmates often work in basic jobs like landscaping or kitchen duty. Violence is rare, respect is currency, but it's spoken through education and influence, not force. You won't hear cell doors slamming at night because there aren't any. That doesn't mean it's easy. Freedom is still gone, letters from home still matter, but for those used to a certain standard of living, these camps act like a buffer. You still clean your own space, but it's shared with professionals, not hardened criminals. You still lose your status, but your safety, for the most part, remains intact. These places are real, and the people in them, while convicted, often exit with their networks, reputations, and in some cases, fortunes still waiting for them on the other side. But not every rich convict gets the easy route. Some fall hard into the real system. For some billionaires, no amount of money, lawyers, or public sympathy can soften the blow. When the justice system or a powerful regime decides to make an example of you, even the richest pockets can't cushion the landing. In those cases, prison stops being a playground and becomes a warning. Mikhail Khodorkovsky once stood at the top of Russia's economic ladder, the head of Yukos Oil, with a net worth in the billions. But when he clashed politically with Vladimir Putin, that money meant nothing. He was arrested in 2003 and sent to a remote Siberian prison colony, 9,000 miles from Moscow and light years away from boardroom comfort. In freezing temperatures, surrounded by career criminals, he endured years of solitary confinement and psychological games. His punishment wasn't just incarceration, it was disappearance. And then there's Zhou Lo, the elusive Malaysian financier behind the infamous 1MDB scandal. While he hasn't yet seen the inside of a cell, his case shows how even global wealth can't guarantee safe harbor. Lo allegedly stole billions from a government fund to finance a life of pure fantasy, yachts, champagne, and funding movies like The Wolf of Wall Street. As the net closed in, he vanished. Today he's a fugitive, reportedly hiding under protection, possibly in China with multiple passports and a bounty on his head. The money he once used to buy influence is now what's keeping him on the run. These are not the stories of soft landings, these are the cases where justice comes with teeth. Isolation becomes standard, meals are served without ceremony. The fear of retaliation, both inside and outside the prison, is real. And mental health? It deteriorates quickly when the spotlight fades and the reality sets in. No more PR teams, no more legal buffering, just silence, steel, and years to count. Whether it's luxury or lockdown, most billionaires face the same daily grind. Behind all the scandal and spectacle, prison time moves slowly, even for billionaires. Stripped of power and stripped of choice, their days fall into the same rhythm as everyone else's. Wake up early, line up for count, find something to fill the long blank hours. Money can't buy more minutes, and inside, that's all there is: time. Martha Stewart wasn't a billionaire, but her case is one of the most recognized. Sent to Alderson Federal Prison Camp in 2004 for lying about a stock sale, she made the most of her 5-month sentence. According to reports, she woke at dawn, swept floors, and taught yoga. She read voraciously, exercised daily, and spent time reflecting. Stewart even crocheted a prison poncho that later became an internet meme when she wore it upon release. Her routine became a blueprint for how public figures can serve time while maintaining their brand, even behind fences. For wealthier inmates, the strategy goes deeper. Some take prison as a moment to pivot, to plan comebacks, or write books. Billionaire Raj Rajaratnam, who served time for insider trading, spent his sentence focused on legal appeals and writings. After his release, he published a memoir, Uneven Justice, casting himself as a victim of an unfair system. The book wasn't just a reflection, it was damage control shaped in a cell. Others used time to build new networks. Prison libraries become study rooms, legal centers double as war rooms for appeals. Some inmates earn certificates or even teach classes. Bernard Ebbers, the former CEO of WorldCom, reportedly taught GED courses while serving a 25-year sentence. He was no longer a boardroom boss, but in prison, the business mind still had value. Some pursue silence intentionally. No statements, no drama, just days spent reading, walking laps, or observing from the sidelines. Removed from the media glare, they become shadows of their former selves, studying the game they once dominated, waiting for the right moment to step back in. Even in the calmest prisons, tension bubbles. Any move can be misread. Wealth still draws attention, sometimes envy. So many of them retreat into strict schedules to avoid conflict, stick to routines, avoid politics, keep their heads down. Because in the end, it's not just about doing time, it's about surviving it, reshaping it, and figuring out what comes next. And outside the walls, the world keeps watching and reacting. When billionaires or celebrities land in prison, it's not just the court that watches them, it's everyone. From headlines to hashtags, the public takes notes. And often, the biggest sentence isn't written in ears, it's in how the world reacts. Felicity Huffman's 2019 sentencing became a flashpoint. She wasn't a billionaire, but the outrage surrounding her 14-day prison sentence for her role in the college admissions scandal spoke volumes. Photos of her wearing a green jumpsuit at a cushy federal facility in Dublin, California, were plastered everywhere. Many saw it as not justice, but a slap on the wrist. It didn't help that she was released in just 11 days. To the public, it confirmed what many suspected, that wealth and status could bend the rules of consequence. The media doesn't miss these details. It counts the days, it zooms in on facility conditions. When privilege enters prison, the tone shifts. Words like lavish, easy, and club-like start creeping into the coverage, and public frustration follows. Regular people serving time for lesser crimes sit behind bars for years, while the powerful seem to glide through on good lawyers and good PR. But it's not just the public who notices, other inmates do too. In prison, respect is earned differently. Some high-profile inmates arrive thinking their name will carry the weight, only to find it makes them a target. Resentment brews quickly when someone gets extra commissary privileges or isn't put on toilet cleaning duty. Whispers turn into stares, favoritism doesn't stay quiet for long. One former inmate at a low-security federal facility recalled the arrival of a well-known financial criminal. He didn't understand how things worked inside, he said. He tried to buy his way into good standing. That doesn't fly in here. Everyone's watching. Sometimes, that pressure spills into scandal. Reports have emerged over the years of wealthy inmates receiving unauthorized visits. Using contraband phones or bribing guards, these stories explode because they strike a nerve. Proof, in many eyes, that money still talks behind bars. And yet, some of these inmates come out the other side with reimagined narratives. They publish memoirs, they book interviews, these same headlines that once screamed fraud shift into redemption. But the public doesn't forget that gap in justice. How different prison can look depending on what's in your bank account. Some use their prison time for redemption or at least a rebrand. For some high-profile offenders, prison doesn't end the story, it sets the stage for the next chapter. Time behind bars becomes a pause, not a period. And when the gates swing open, the world often waits to see what kind of person steps out. Jordan Belfort walked into prison as the face of greed and manipulation. When he walked out, he had a plan. The man once known for defrauding investors out of millions rebranded himself as a motivational speaker. He sold the same energy, the same voice, but wrapped it in the language of lessons learned. His book, The Wolf of Wall Street, turned into a movie, and suddenly, he wasn't just a con man, he was content. A walking study case in reinvention, charisma intact. Martha Stewart's post-prison path was different. She didn't deny or hide from her past. Instead, she doubled down on what made her famous. She leaned into her brand, domestic queen turned prison survivor. She returned to television, launched new business ventures, and even teamed up with Snoop Dogg for a cooking show, proving she could laugh at herself while still setting the table better than anyone else. Her prison stint became a side note, not a scar. But not everyone gets that bounce back. Some leave prison to find their networks evaporated, their businesses dissolved, their name reduced to a headline. The doors that once opened effortlessly are locked, and the spotlight burns instead of shines. Redemption is a fragile thing. It requires timing, public patience, and sometimes a touch of luck. Still, those who know how to work a room often know how to work a comeback. They write books, they find speaking gigs, they start podcasts or investment firms in quieter corners of the market. Prison becomes part of the narrative, not the whole of it. Not everyone forgives, but enough people forget, especially if there's a good story attached. But for some, prison isn't the end, it's the start of something more dangerous. Do billionaires ever really do hard time, or just expensive timeouts? Leave your thoughts in the comments.